Hey everybody, it's Brandy,
And Michelle.
and this is Spooky Shit.
Ah! How did it feel?
I'm red. I'm nervous.
I'm the most nervous I've ever been in my life.
Okay, so this week we're going to talk about the history of the gays.
It's Pride Month, bitches.
Hell yeah!
So I'm going to start off talking about the Stonewall Riots, and then I'm talking about Marsha P Johnson.
Well, I'm going to start off with talking about Sylvia Rivera, and then the Lavender Scare, a little bit of Harvey Milk, and then gay marriage.
Respect, we're going all across the board here.
Warning. This episode may contain graphic details. Listener discretion is advised.
In 1966, 3 members of the Mafia opened the Stonewall Inn as a gay bar. Previously, it had been a nightclub and restaurant for straight people, but they figured that if they catered to the LGBTQ crowd, they could make some good money. The bar was one of the only ones in the city where couples could actually dance and slow dance with one another, I think it had 2 dance floors, and it quickly became popular for this reason. And just because the Mafia opened this bar, please do not get it twisted. They still treated the customers like shit. They were not, open-minded by any means. They would water down the drinks, demand payoffs for protection, and sometimes they would even blackmail wealthier customers who frequented the bar, threatening to out them. The bar was originally only open to men, but later they allowed women and drag queens in as well. Also, I was talking to Brandy before, and I'm probably going to be switching a lot between LGBT, LGBTQ, and LGBTQA because when I was reading, people were using all of the different ones, and I just kind of went with whatever I was reading.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. About once a month, the bar was subjected to police raids, but they weren't that big of a deal to the Mafia as they had a good relationship with members of the police, and they would often get tip-offs when the raids were going to occur. So they could just hide their alcohol, and they're fine. Early in the morning of June 28, 1969, there was a planned raid at Stonewall Inn, but this time the Mafia was not given a heads up. There's no clear answer as to why not, but some people believe it's because police were basically upset that they weren't receiving additional money from the blackmails that I mentioned, and so they decided to close down the bar permanently. There was also apparently a rumor that a raid may occur that night, but at a much later time than normal, so the bar employees thought it was just incorrect and didn't think about it. On that early Saturday morning, the bar had around 250 people in it when 4 undercover police, 2 men and 2 women, arrived to gather evidence. I'm guessing that this means they looked around and they're like, this looks like some gay shit to me. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Once they were ready, they used the bar's payphones to call for backup. At 1:20 a.m., 4 plainclothes cops, 2 patrol officers, a detective, and a deputy inspector arrived at the bar and announced to the patrons, police were taking the place. While people who had never experienced a raid before were confused, others who knew what was happening tried to run for the doors and windows in the bathroom, but they were all barred by the police. So their plan, as per standard procedure, was to line up everyone before checking their IDs. Female officers would then take any customers dressed as women to the bathroom to verify their sex. And if anyone dressed as a woman had a penis, they would then be arrested. I feel like this is assault? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, at the very least, it's just extremely transphobic, but I'm like, oh god, that's creepy.
That's just super invasive, too.
Very invasive, yes. Yeah, not a fan of this, I must say. I'd say overall not a fan of most of this story.
Mm-hmm.
So this night, however, some of the customers were just not having it with the police's shit. People that were there recall a sense of discomfort that was spreading quickly around the room, especially as some officers began to sexually assault lesbians by inappropriately feeling them up as they were frisking them. Some of the women who were supposed to be checked in the bathroom were starting to just straight up refuse to go, and men in the line had started to decline to show their IDs. Just everyone in there was just you know what? Not tonight. Perhaps sensing that the energy was off, police separated the patrons who were suspected of cross-dressing to a back room of the bar. One trans woman, who was not out to her family, recalled, My biggest fear was that I would be arrested. My second biggest fear was that my picture would be in a newspaper or on television report in my mother's dress. It was a common thing when reporting like raids and stuff like this. They would like post people's names and stuff and get them like fired from their jobs basically. So very, very real fear. The cars that were supposed to be used to transport all of the bar's alcohol and newly arrested customers, called patrol wagons, were taking longer than they were supposed to get there. So while those were on the way, patrons had to wait in line for around 15 minutes. Some people were allowed to leave without getting arrested, a number of whom were pushed or kicked out by the police. Literally pushed and kicked. Instead of doing what people usually did and just leaving, these guests instead began to stop outside the building and watch. Slowly, a crowd began to form, and within minutes, there were over 100 people. Some had come from inside the bar, and others had just seen the police cars and were curious to see what was happening. Most of the crowd were in the LGBTQ community, but there were also some straight people too. Some of the guests who had just been released began to kind of like put on a show for the crowd. They were posing and mock saluting the police as the crowd applauds them. One person later said, "The stars were in their element. Wrists were limp, hair was primped, and reactions to the applause were classic." I don't even know what that means. I just thought it sounded really dramatic. So I wanted to include that. I don't know, especially the reactions to the applause were classic. By the time that the first patrol wagon arrived, the crowd outside appeared to be at least 10 times the amount of people that had actually been arrested. The first to be taken to the wagon's custody were mafia members, and the crowd cheered as they were taken. Next was regular bar employees. While they were being escorted, someone shouted out "Gay Power," while another person began to sing a song called "We Shall Overcome." The crowd reacted to these with amusement, but it was noted that it was mixed with growing and intensive hostility, especially as an officer shoved a trans woman who responded by hitting him in the head with her purse. Respect. An author who happened to be passing by said, "Everyone's restless, angry, and high-spirited. No one has a slogan, no one even has an attitude, but something's brewing." As the rumor began to spread around the crowd that the customers still inside were being beaten, the crowd outside began to throw first pennies and then beer bottles at the patrol wagon. An unidentified woman in handcuffs, described as a typical New York butch, was being escorted to the patrol wagon, but she kept fighting with like the 4 officers trying to detain her, and she was fighting with them for like about 10 minutes, repeatedly escaping and then just being re-detained like over and over as she was yelling and swearing. She said that her handcuffs were too tight and they were just basically ignoring her too. A witness said that she was hit in the head with a police baton at least one time, and as an officer was picking her up to put her in the wagon, this woman looked at the crowd of onlookers and shouted at them, "Why don't you guys do something?" Reportedly, at this point, the crowd went berserk. So I don't know who this woman was. There's like theories about who it was, but I won't say just in case because there were several people it could be.
Mm-hmm.
So the police tried to restrain the crowd by knocking people down, which obviously just made people more upset. The crowd tried to overturn 2 police cars in the wagon, who quickly all drove off, and while police were distracted, some of the people in handcuffs were able to escape. And there's some debate about whether or not they were left unattended on purpose to escape, as these were mostly like the bar employees who were in the mafia and had a relationship with the cops, you know? But by now, there were around 500 to 600 people joining in the crowd, throwing coins and beer bottles at the police, who in return lashed out in violence. The building itself was being destroyed as people began to throw garbage cans, rocks, bottles, and bricks at it, shattering the windows. Those who were considered the most outcast, even in the gay community, flame queens, hustlers, and gay street kids, led the way for the first wave of the throwing. I said those so weird because I don't even know what these things mean. Like, what? I think it was drag queens, maybe sex workers, and then gay street kids. If I had to guess. And these people also pulled out a parking meter and used it as a battering ram on the Stonewall Inn doors. Which I thought was fucking hilarious. For whatever reason, mob members still there began to light garbage on fire and shove it into the bar through broken windows. I don't know what they were even doing. They're just having fun, I guess. Police grabbed a fire hose to try and disperse the crowd, but the water pressure didn't work, so it was just encouraging everyone to fight back more. I'm sorry I'm laughing. It's just really funny for me to imagine this in my head. There's actually only one known photograph that was taken of the events that unfolded that night, and it shows young homeless people who slept in a nearby park fighting with police. In the next month's issue of the Mattachine Society newsletter, which was like a gay organization, they offer an explanation of why these young people were joining in on the riots at Stonewall Inn, saying it catered largely to a group of people who are not welcome in or cannot afford other places of homosexual social gathering. The Stonewall became a home to these kids. When it was raided, they fought for it. That, and the fact that they had nothing to lose other than the most tolerant and broad-minded gay place in town, explains why. Eventually, the TPF, aka Tactical Patrol Force, of the NYPD arrived to try and free police who had barricaded themselves inside the bar. The police had very slight injuries, like one had a cut eye and some had some bruises, but overall, the main thing that was wrong with them is that they were super fucking pissed. An activist named Bob Kohler happened to be walking his dog by the bar that night when the TPF showed up, and he said, "I had been in enough riots to know the fun was over. The cops were totally humiliated. This never ever happened. They were angrier than I guess they had ever been because everybody else had rioted, but the fairies were not supposed to riot. No group had ever forced cops to retreat before, so the anger was just enormous. I mean, they wanted to kill." They basically started trying to arrest anyone and everyone they could, but sure as hell was not going to be that easy, and just as many people were fighting back furiously to avoid being taken into custody.
Yeah.
As the TPF formed a line to try and slowly march and push the crowd back, like on TV when they do with their shield things, members of the crowd started to form kick lines. Like kick lines all standing together dancing. So they kicked along to a chant they had made up going, "We are the Stonewall girls. We wear our hair in curls. We don't wear underwear. We show our pubic hair." I love it. Yeah, I watched a little bit of a clip where they were saying stuff like myths and true stuff from Stonewall, and they were like, "Oh, one thing that's a myth is that there was kick lines." They're like, "There weren't any kick lines. There were lots of kick lines." And then it just showed clips of all these old men who had been there repeating the rhyme back.
Yeah.
Oh my god. The crowd was cheering and mocking police and really just having a good time until the police began to rush them with nightsticks. One person recalled, "I just can't ever get that one side out of my mind. The cops with the nightsticks and the kick line on the other side. It was the most amazing thing. And all of a sudden that kick line, which I guess was a spoof of the machismo, I think that's when I felt rage because people were getting smashed with bats. And for what? A kick line." So, a man named Craig Rodwell, who owned a bookstore in the gay community, said that he was watching people being chased along the streets by police. It's kind of funny, though, because whenever he saw them again, after they'd turn a corner, the script was flipped and the police were the ones being chased.
Oh, shit.
That reminds me of a cartoon, where they're running through all the doors and then they switch. I thought that was fucking hilarious. By 4 a.m., the streets had basically emptied and people were all hanging out on stoops or the nearby Christopher Park, kind of just in disbelief at what had just happened. There was an eerie and surreal quiet, but they could still feel electricity in the air. 13 people had been arrested that night. 4 police officers were injured, while some of the crowd had to be hospitalized due to injuries. As for Stonewall Inn, nearly everything had been broken, even random things inside, like toilets and payphones. It's unknown what of the damage was done by the crowds and what was done by the police. Because I also read that the police might have been starting fires too, which I'm sure they did.
Yeah, especially since they were mad. They were probably fuck this place.
Dude, right? So Dave Van Ronk, a folk singer who had also been a mentor of Bob Dylan, happened to be walking by the Stonewall Inn during the peak of the backlash and joined in the crowd. He himself wasn't gay, but is quoted as saying, "As far as I was concerned, anybody who'd stand against the cops was all right with me, and that's why I stayed in. Every time you turned around, the cops were pulling some outrage or another." According to him, he was dragged into the bar by police who punched and slapped him until he was nearly unconscious, and then they arrested him for assault. And he was one of the 13 people arrested that night. And he was also one of the people barricaded inside the bar along with 10 police officers who trapped themselves in there for safety.
Damn.
Like little bitches. Later in the morning, still Saturday the 28th, 3 newspapers had covered the riots and news of them quickly spread throughout Greenwich Village. Rumors began to spread that they had either been organized by Students for a Democratic Society, the Black Panthers, or that it all went down when, and this is weirdly specific here, a homosexual police officer whose roommate went dancing at the Stonewall against the officer's wishes. I don't know who started this rumor. That is so specific. And while it might seem like this was all planned, all the participants active in the Stonewall riots, like, super insist it was not. It just happened. A person named Michael Fader said, "We all had a collective feeling like we'd had enough of this shit. It wasn't anything tangible anyone said to anyone else. It was just kind of like everything over the years had come to a head on that one particular night in that one particular place. And it was not an organized demonstration. Everyone in the crowd felt that we were never going to go back. It was the last straw. It was time to reclaim something that had always been taken from us. All kinds of people, all different reasons, but mostly it was total outrage, anger, sorrow, and everything combined. And everything just kind of ran its course. It was the police who were doing the most destruction. We were really trying to get back in and break free. And we felt that we had freedom at last, or freedom at least to show that we demanded freedom. We weren't going to be walking meekly in the night and letting them shove us around. It's like standing your ground for the first time and in a really strong way. And that's what caught the police by surprise. There was something in the air, freedom a long time overdue, and we're going to fight for it. It took different forms, but the bottom line was we weren't going to go away, and we didn't." So all throughout that day, people went by the burned and destroyed building to check it out and like notice graffiti on the walls saying things like "support gay power" and "they invaded our rights." I think one thing that was written said that the bar was still open. Mafia wrote that, I'm guessing. I don't know. But that day, over 5,000 leaflets were passed out demanding that the Mafia and cops stayed out of gay bars, that the mayor's office investigate the intolerable situation, and that gay people open their own bars. That night, the rioting began again as thousands of people gathered in front of the remains of the bar. Many were people who had been there the night before, but also along with them were curious bystanders, tourists, and police. I just love to imagine tourists. They're like, "Oh, honey, let's go check out this riot." LGBTQ people were openly showing affection in the streets, which is just like fucking unheard of at the time. And there's some debate as to if this night was more crazy than the night before or less, but regardless, they still went pretty berserk. The street began to get so full that participants in the riot were starting to spill into the blocks next to it. Some of the people involved would like go and surround buses and cars on the street, and they would basically bother the occupants until they either said that they were gay or agreed that they supported the movement, which I think we should still do that. Like, why not? Be like, "Tell us you're gay or we won't leave." I thought that was like probably one of my favorite parts. And Marsha P Johnson, who I'll be talking about more in my next story, she climbed a lamppost and dropped a heavy bag onto a police car, shattering the windshield. This has been confirmed. And fires were started in trash cans around the neighborhood. Kick lines were being performed. And unfortunately, another recurring theme from the night before was the bitch-ass police were trying to ruin everything. Of course. So there were more than 100 police officers there, joined again by the TPF around 2 p.m. Police and the TPF would go and capture demonstrators to arrest them, but the crowd would like go and surge to recapture these people who were just arrested. Sorry if you hear beeping in the background. This went back and forth for 2 hours until again the streets ended up being cleared. The following 2 days it was raining, so while there were definitely some altercations between cops and residents of Greenwich, it was not as all out as the night before's. On that Wednesday, however, the crowd was rekindled when a newspaper called The Village Voice reported on the riots and basically used like very homophobic language, like saying the F slur and things I'm not going to repeat. But people were so pissed that between 500 and 1,000 people went to the offices of the paper and threatened to burn down the building. We just don't do it like we used to, you guys. Come on. I thought that was like kind of cool, I'm not going to lie. But again, police showed up and there was basically another street battle that went on for about an hour, resulting in injuries, the arrest of 5 people, and looting that everyone agrees was likely by the non-gay protesters. Same shit as like Black Lives Matter protests, and then just like all the white people going by looting. I'm like, oh my god. If there's looting somewhere, it's probably not by the people actually protesting, PSA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Facts.
But anyway, the protests kind of seemed to light a fire under a lot of the LGBTQ people around Greenwich, making them feel empowered and wanting to do something to help fight for gay rights. But not all of the community was happy about the riots. Older gay people and members of the Mattachine Society that I mentioned were actually like pretty upset about it because their whole thing was making gay people seem just as boring as straight people, and just in general they seemed to be seeking assimilation into a very heterocentric world. They saw the riots as embarrassing, thinking that demonstrators were basically just proving to homophobic people what they already believed, that the LGBTQ community was disorderly, tacky, and cheap. Weirdly homophobic stance coming from literally a group of gay men, and unfortunate because it made people not want to join them as they were like too mild, I guess, for lack of a better word. So it kind of just went against themselves, really. Everyone was like, oh, okay, well, you guys are boring, we don't want to join your stupid club anyway. The Gay Liberation Front, also known as GLF, was formed soon after the riots by announcing in a flyer, "Do you think homosexuals are revolting? You bet your sweet ass we are." Also one of my favorites of this story. They are the first known gay organization to actually have the word gay in their name, and one of the first organizations to form post-Stonewall. A little side note here, because I didn't know when to mention it. One of the notable members of the GLF was Marsha P Johnson. So this group staged protests for gay rights, hosted same-sex dances, and also took on the same causes as the Black Panthers, wanting to like align themselves with Black people and anti-war protesters in an attempt to work to restructure American society. This specific group ended up disbanding as members were disagreeing on how to operate, and their meetings were notably chaotic, but there were plenty of other groups to start up around the same time. In December of 1969, the Gay Activist Alliance, also called GAA, was formed by several people who felt frustrated after going to a GLF meeting because, like I said, these motherfuckers were chaotic. They think they probably just weren't planning well and were just like, let's just do something. This group was specifically focused on gay rights issues and wrote, "We as liberated homosexual activists demand the freedom for expression of our dignity and value as human beings." In 1970, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, called STAR, was formed by Marsha P Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. Side notes, a lot of LGBTQ history uses the word transvestite when they really meant like transgender people and drag queens. Don't use this word to refer to people ever now. Like, a lot of times in my story, they mention this word, and I was like, I'm gonna switch this out with a different word.
Yeah.
Yeah. STAR worked to provide housing and support to homeless LGBTQ youth and sex workers. Sylvia and Marsha weren't like rolling in the deep or anything either. They were also struggling, and they funded the organization primarily from partaking in sex work themselves. They were also at times homeless, but when they were able to rent a hotel room or apartment, they would sneak in their homeless friends to come stay with them. Reportedly up to 50 guests at a time.
Damn.
Fucking love it, all in one hotel room. Just a big sleepover. STAR and the GLF together hosted a fundraising dance in late 1970 and used this money to buy a house for STAR. It was 4 bedrooms, but that makes it sound nicer than it was. It was pretty run down, and they didn't have any electricity or heat. Sadly, this house was only active for several months. When the STAR House ended, Marsha and Sylvia started to focus more on gaining recognition for trans people within the gay rights movement and within general society. Just a few years after forming STAR, the group was disbanded when Sylvia chose to leave and move to upstate New York because she was tired of the transphobia they were facing in their own community. Like, literally, they were banned from participating in a pride parade by the Gay and Lesbian Committee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you probably mentioned that in your story, actually.
Well, I didn't, but I remember reading about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they said that it made them look bad to have them.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so Sylvia is quoted as saying about this, "We died in 1973, the 4th anniversary of Stonewall. That's when we were told we were a threat and an embarrassment to women because lesbians felt offended by our attire, us wearing makeup. It came down to a brutal battle on the stage that year at Washington Square Park between me and people I considered my comrades and friends." How fucked up is that, man? But
Very.
in defiance, Sylvia and Marsha went to the fucking parade anyway and marched in front of the parade. They're gods, dude. I love them.
They're badass.
I know everything I read about them too, and I was like, yeah, they were best friends. You like can't mention one without mentioning the other when you talk about their activism work.
Mm-hmm.
1 year after Stonewall, the first gay pride marches in U.S. history happened for the first time in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. The permit for the New York parade was only delivered 2 hours before the event, and it only took half the time they expected because people were so excited they were like walking fast. Also, they were definitely a little nervous about carrying around these banners and signs that were so pro-LGBTQ, but in a really nice turn of events, they actually didn't face too much resistance from bystanders, from what I could tell. And thinking back now, I'm like, all right, too much resistance in the 70s. They probably definitely got resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes. And to really oversimplify it, the Pride parades basically just got bigger and bigger every year. More cities and countries began to host their own parades and create different LGBTQ organizations. One of the past members of the Mattachine Society later said, by the time of Stonewall, we had 50 to 60 gay groups in the country. A year later, there was at least 1,500. By 2 years later, to the extent that a count could be made, it was 2,500. Other members of the society also changed their tone, thankfully, with one saying that calling Stonewall an embarrassment was one of the biggest mistakes of his life. I'm glad they were all like, oh my god, we're just as bad as the straights. They've switched around real quick.
They were like, just kidding.
Just kidding. We love Stonewall. In June of 1999, Christopher Street, which is the street that Stonewall's on, and the surrounding area were added to the National Register of Historic Places, the first of significance related to the LGBTQ community. In June of 2015, the Stonewall Inn was marked as a city landmark, and in 2016, President Obama designated it as a national monument. I could truly go on and on about all the ways that the Stonewall Riots impacted the U.S. and the gay rights movement, but unfortunately, this episode is not going to be 5 hours long, and we still have a lot of other shit to talk about. So that is my really simplified ending for the Stonewall Riots.
Still a lot of good information because...
Oh, yeah.
To be honest, I feel like a lot of our own community, especially the younger generations, don't know everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
We just know that it was a really important event.
I told Brandy, whenever we weren't recording last week, I didn't even know what Stonewall really was. I was like, I knew that something happened and now gay rights.
Yeah, to be honest, me too. I just knew it was a significant event.
But we don't know why. Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know the details or any of that.
And I thought it was so interesting. Sorry to segue a little bit, but whenever I was reading okay, this is why my notes take me until literally right before we record to finish, because I was reading the history of LGBTQ people back in BC years and up to Stonewall. I get so fucking distracted. But anyway, it was weird because there was times where they'd be accepted. In the 1920s, LGBTQ people were being more accepted. There was actors who were openly gay and stuff. And then the 1930s, fucking no offense, but Christianity made a revival and kind of fucking ruined everything. And conservatism became popular again. I like how they refer to it as popular. Gay actors were told to get back in the closet or retire. Dang. And I also found out Stonewall was not the first big riot. There was also the Compton's cafeteria raid in San Francisco in 1966 and the Copper Donuts riot in Los Angeles in 1959. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's also a lot of
I read that there was also some in London too. They were fighting
some in London, yeah. So, I know this was all I just saw on the US page. Stonewall. Yeah, Stonewall was the biggest for sure, but it's not stuff wasn't happening before. Some of these stories were in the 50s and stuff. We've been around for a minute is what I'm trying to say, and we're not leaving.
For a long minute.
For quite a fucking minute. I was getting so annoyed reading back because it seemed every country had their version of the LGBTQ community and different genders and stuff. And then white Christians were we're gonna colonize you and turn you all homophobic. Bitches, truly. To simplify it as well. I'm not going into all the deeper shit that was happening because that would take me fucking forever.
It'd be 3 episodes.
Dude, I know. Oh, also, we're actually doing an entire Pride month. And that's not making a joke about how you said 3 episodes. We're doing a different Pride theme every week.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a really depressing month.
Bit.
Yeah, we're starting off
But
on a more
it needs to
positive
be
note.
talked about.
Oh, for sure. I was hoping I could find gay ghosts, but so far no such luck. I'm still gonna keep looking because I would love to end the month on a gay ghost
if any
story.
of you guys know some gay ghosts,
please let us know and we will talk about it. That's like, that would be the peak of our entire podcast if we could have an episode on gay ghosts. We need
maybe they just haven't come out yet.
Did you mean to do it? Because that was perfect.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, that was so good. That was the best. There was just pure joy, and all I could say was "Badoom." Okay, let me move on to my second story. So, Marsha P Johnson was born on August 24th, 1945, in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Her father was an assembly line worker, and her mother was a housekeeper, and together the couple had 6 children. So I wanted to say Marsha P Johnson was not her legal name, as Marsha was likely trans, but for the sake of not dead naming her, I'm just going to use this name only. And as for why I put the likely in there, well, Marsha did use the pronoun she, her during life. She would variably identify as gay, a transvestite, or a drag queen, but never actually called herself trans. But at the same time, transgender was not a common term, so it's not known if she actually did identify as that, and some people think that she was more gender non-conforming than anything, but I'm just going to keep referring to her as trans because that's what most people believe. I also did not know that prior to reading about her. Like I said, everyone used the word transvestite back then too. I don't get it.
Yeah. Or a little spoiler, Sylvia actually identified as a drag queen.
Yes, yeah. Marsha did sometimes too, and I wonder if that's just their, I don't know if that was a persona or if they really were trans and they just didn't really have a better way of saying it, you know?
Maybe. Well, with Sylvia, she kind of, what's the word? She struggled with her identity. She didn't really start taking hormones until the last few years of her life, just because she doesn't like labels, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know it was mentioned. I didn't watch the entire thing, but I watched some of a documentary about Marsha, and she was talking about how hormones became more of a thing in the 60s, and I think that the way she was saying it was she would take them sometimes, but I couldn't totally tell. So I don't know. But a lot of her friends that I read about refer to her as she, but some did say he every once in a while. So I'll just go with she because that's what she used. I truly had no idea because I doubt that the word transgender was even in their fucking vocabulary in the 60s.
It wasn't.
It was very niche, I'm sure. But yeah. During her childhood, Marsha would attend an African Methodist Episcopal, wow, never said that word out loud, a church with her family. She began to wear dresses at just 5 years old, but stopped briefly because she was being harassed by boys who lived nearby. Also during her childhood, Marsha was sexually assaulted by a 13-year-old boy at some point. Her mom reportedly thought that being gay was lower than a dog and didn't care to learn more about being gay. So despite her realizing she was not cishet, Marsha just thought of the idea of being gay as some sort of dream and chose not to be sexually active as a teenager. See, that's also why I'm not sure, because she would talk about dreaming of being gay and stuff. But also, I don't know if that meant more dreaming of being herself as a woman, you know?
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. I didn't know her. I didn't know Marsha. Marsha graduated from a high school in Elizabeth in 1963 at the age of 17, and then promptly left home for New York City with nothing but her high school diploma, a bag full of clothes, and $15. She made it to Greenwich and began to wait tables. But by 1966, she was living on the streets, and at some point she had started hanging out with sex workers, and her life totally changed from there on out. She came out as LGBTQ and began to partake in sex work herself. She later said, "My life had been built around sex and gay liberation, being a drag queen." It was around this time that she began to refer to herself as Marsha P Johnson. When asked what the P stood for, she would respond, "Pay it no mind," which, great. A phrase which she also used when people asked her what her gender was. You know what? Trans or non-binary probably is what I'm getting here. Pay it no
That's
mind.
awesome.
I know, right? And this phrase actually got her out of jail once when she said it to a judge and he found it amusing. Her life was not all lighthearted, though. Marsha claimed that while working as a sex worker, she was arrested over 100 times and was also later shot in the late 70s. She had her first of several mental breakdowns in 1970 and just had a history of, like, mental health issues. Okay, so the story I'm about to say, I don't know if this happened more than once, but the way this guy worded it is like it did. So that's kind of how I worded it too. But he said that Marsha would come up to him when he was out where the two would sometimes be sunbathing together, and she tried to take off his clothes, saying her dad needed it and it was a sacrifice to her father and to Neptune, but he'd refuse. And after he said no, Marsha would take off all her clothes and walk up Christopher Street naked, only to be taken away for a few months to be treated with antipsychotic medication, and then return to the streets where she acted like a zombie until the meds wore off after about a month and she'd be back to normal. So I don't know if this was like a pattern and this would frequently happen.
Damn.
Yeah, and the sacrificing clothes to her dad thing was interesting. Someone else said that sometimes she would like look into water and like kind of hallucinate and said she could see her dad at the bottom of it. I don't know. From what I read, I mean, like I think I said I didn't get to finish this documentary. I was just skipping around it a little bit. I don't know, like, I didn't know anything about her dad really other than where he worked. So I'm assuming that they had a bad relationship because that's odd. Marsha was usually thought of as being generous and warm-hearted, even saintly, but sometimes she would show her angry side when she was particularly depressed or under severe stress. It was noted that she would normally show this part of herself when she was acting under her male persona and using her dead name. She could become short-tempered and speak in a deeper voice. One person described these two sides of Marsha as a schizophrenic personality at work. When going through these phases, it wasn't uncommon for her to get into fights and wind up in jail or sedated in hospital, where then her friends would have to earn money to help bail her out. She did have a really good group of friends, though, I must say. Just fucking earning her money to bail her out all the time. It's pretty sick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I know anyone who'd do that for me. I don't know if I'd do that for anyone. I'd be like, I could help set up a GoFundMe for you. Like, but they were like her chosen family, basically. Marsha, who was tall and thin, was unable to afford more expensive clothing like other well-known drag queens, so she just wore what she could. She would wear flowing robes and shiny dresses, along with red plastic high heels and bright wigs. At times, she would sleep under flower sorting tables in the flower district of Manhattan, and she'd be given leftover flowers. So she was pretty well known for like wearing flower crowns that she had made herself. And if you look at pictures of her, a lot of them, she has like flowers in her hair. I didn't know that's why she did that. Most of the drag shows she participated in weren't like the glamorous shows you may think of from TV, but they were more like comedic and political and like more low-key. She later on in life did have a chance to perform with some other groups in like the 90s and the 80s, I believe. I forgot to write this down, but I think that they were more, I'd say that they had like a higher budget is how I'd word it. She was one of the first drag queens to begin frequenting the Stonewall Inn once they began to allow women in. So contrary to popular belief, Marsha did not begin the Stonewall Riots, which I thought until today.
Wow.
Yeah, this was another thing that me and Brandy were talking about last week, and we're like, yeah, and Marsha started it. But apparently not. So, yeah, some people actually did like credit her with starting it, but according to Marsha, in 1987, she did partake in the Stonewall Riots, but she didn't arrive on the scene until 2 a.m. when they were already in full swing and there were already fires going. There is a really popular rumor that when police raided the bar, Marsha threw a shot glass at a mirror and screamed, "I got my civil rights," saying that it was the shot glass heard around the world. It's unclear if this actually happened or if it did happen if it wasn't Marsha. Because like I said, she arrived later in the night, and if she did arrive later, why would she like go inside the bar to throw a shot glass? I don't know. But people were throwing everything, man. It's not impossible. Personally, I would like to believe that this story happened though, because it's great, and I like saying the shot glass heard around the world, but we might never know. It's also possible that she did start it, but people didn't want to like say she did because, like I said, I think I kind of mentioned before, there's a lot of transphobia in the LGBTQ community, and they didn't really want Marsha to be known for starting this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they were being
Still kinda
transphobic.
is.
Oh, 100%. But especially back then, they, like, wouldn't want to give her
Yeah.
credit if she did, I should say. And on top of that, like, she had mental health issues, so it wasn't like the poster person that they wanted. So definitely possible she did, and they just didn't mention it. There was another rumor that Marsha had thrown a brick at a police officer, but this has also never been confirmed or denied. And while these may be uncertain, it is confirmed that she climbed up that lamppost, like I said, and broke the car windshield. So, still a god regardless.
That's badass.
That is,
Just
I
gotta
feel like
say.
that's more hardcore than throwing a shot glass and hitting someone, is climbing up a lamppost and dropping a bag.
Yeah, bro, that's a hard thing to do.
Dude, the upper arm strength, I can't even imagine. I have no arm strength. I'm so weak.
Same. I'm weak.
The adrenaline gets going, you just climb up that lamppost. So like I said before, post-Stonewall, Marsha went on to join the GLF. Following the 1-year anniversary of the riot, she was one of many people who went march in the first gay pride parade, and her close friend Sylvia went on to form the STAR organization. Marsha was a very active and vocal part of the gay community. During one rally in the early 70s, a reporter asked why they were demonstrating, and Marsha yelled into the mic, "Darling, I want my gay rights now." Another time, Marsha was confronted by police for hustling, and I don't know, like I kind of said earlier, I don't know what hustling means, but I'm assuming it means sex work. But anyway, while they were trying to arrest her, she hit them with her handbag, which had 2 bricks in it.
Huh.
So you know what? Thinking back, maybe she did do that other thing at Stonewall where she hit an officer with a brick.
Maybe.
Honestly, good protection though if you're living on the streets. Just keep a bunch of bricks in your handbag.
Be heavy, but true.
Heavy, but it'll fuck someone up if they try to mess with you.
Save your life.
Exactly. When facing a judge for this, he asked why she needed the money, and she told him that she needed it for a tombstone for her husband. Obviously, gay marriage was illegal at this time, and the judge didn't believe her and said, "What happened to this alleged husband?" To which Marsha replied, "Pig shot him." She was originally sentenced to 90 days in prison for assault, but her lawyer was able to convince the judge to send her to a mental hospital instead. And again, like I mentioned previously, Marsha and Sylvia went on to be the heads of the Star House, where they provided shelter for trans and gay street kids. Marsha worked as a sex worker to be able to provide these kids and others on the street with food and clothing, and did her best to give them emotional support and a sense of family. In 1980, it was a particularly cold night, about 10 degrees out, when Marsha was invited to stay with a friend for the night, and she ended up staying at his place for the next 12 years.
Damn.
I know, that's how you find a roommate. Throughout the 80s, Marsha continued to be an active activist. I wanted to say that. I thought that was fun to say. And this included her working with ACT UP, a group that was trying to end the AIDS epidemic, as an organizer and a marshal. On July 6, 1992, not long after the 1992 New York Pride Parade, Marsha's body was found floating in the Hudson River. She was just 46 years old. Police initially ruled her death as a suicide, despite a supposed wound that was on the back of her head, but most of her friends in the community who were always around her insisted that she was not suicidal, and rightly pointed out that if there was a wound on her head, this was super fucking suspicious. While one friend did believe that Marsha may have taken her life, due to her growing increasingly sick and her kind of falling into a fragile state, her friend Sylvia vehemently denies this. She said that she and Marsha had made a pact to cross the River Jordan together, and by River Jordan, I mean the Hudson River. It was also noted that while, yes, she did struggle with her mental health, this had never manifested in suicidal tendencies before, and there was no note found. Another friend theorized that perhaps she had hallucinated and walked into the river, if she'd seen her dad at the bottom, like I'd said before, maybe she thought she could walk home through the water, or possibly she jumped in to get away from people harassing her. Several witnesses actually came forward and said that they had seen Marsha being harassed by a group of people who were also robbing others. One witness said they saw a man fighting Marsha and using a homophobic slur, and that later this man had bragged at a bar that he murdered a drag queen named Marsha. When the witness went to tell the police all this, they were ignored. Super fucking clear that the police at the time had no interest in investigating what very well could be a murder case.
Yeah.
Like, at first I was like, oh, like, maybe she was just being chased and fell. And then I read that and I'm like, okay, murdered a drag queen named Marsha. How fucking specific is that?
Oh, very specific.
I would say so. Marsha's body was cremated, and friends released these ashes over the river following a funeral that hundreds of people attended. In 2002, a police investigation changed the cause of Marsha's death from suicide to undetermined, and in 2012, it was reopened as a possible homicide. I couldn't find any updates on it now, though. There are 2 documentaries about Marsha, one named Pay It No Mind, The Life and Times of Marsha P Johnson, and the second is named The Death and Life of Marsha P Johnson. In 2019, Marsha was inducted on the National LGBTQ Wall of Honor within the Stonewall Inn Monument, which is dedicated to American pioneers, trailblazers, and heroes. This took place 50 years following the historic events of Stonewall. And that's it for Marsha. There's a lot of overlap in my stories. I'm sorry. There's probably going to be more in Brandy's, too.
Yeah.
When we're talking about the same stuff.
Yeah. Especially because Sylvia and Marsha were like best friends.
I know, right? Everything that Marsha did, Sylvia did too.
Basically.
That's okay. We'll just really like ingrain in everyone's heads that they did this shit.
They did this.
They did that.
But yeah, Sylvia Rivera was an American gay liberation and transgender rights activist who was also a noted community worker in New York. I said it earlier, she identified as a drag queen.
Yeah.
But she was born and raised in New York City and lived most of her life near the city. She was Puerto Rican and Venezuelan.
Okay.
So she was Latina.
Yeah.
She was abandoned by her birth father in early life and became an orphan after her mother died by suicide.
Jesus.
Yeah. She was raised by her grandmother, who disapproved of her effeminate behavior. Because I guess she started wearing makeup in 4th grade.
Oh, okay. That's kind of cool that she did that.
Yeah, she had balls.
She probably got fucking bullied like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
dang, what a baller.
But yeah, as a result, she left home in 1961, just shy of her 11th birthday, and was forced to work as a child prostitute.
Oh my god.
Yeah, she was eventually taken in by a local community of drag queens who gave her name Sylvia.
Oh, that's cute. She left home so young, Brandy.
She did.
That's shocking.
But yeah, she basically hustled too. And she battled with substance abuse and lived on the streets and was like homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why she wanted to like help people, because she was right there with them.
Oh.
Her experiences made her focus more on helping those in her view. Like, I mean, right by her.
Oh, okay. Like her peers, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like,
that's
in
a
her
better
view.
word for it. But yeah, she fought partly for herself for those reasons, but mostly for the rights of the people of color and low-income LGBT people.
Nice.
Sheesh, I can't speak.
It's okay. You got through it.
As someone who suffered from systematic poverty and racism, she used her voice for unity, sharing her stories, pain, and struggles to show her community that they are not alone. She amplified the voices of the most vulnerable members of the gay community: drag queens, homeless youth, gay inmates in prison and jail, and transgender people.
Hell yeah.
I also have like this is one of her speech that she said somewhere.
Oh, cool.
I left home at the age of 10 in 1961. I hustled on 42nd Street. The early 60s was not a good time for drag queens, effeminate boys, or boys that wore makeup, like we did. Back then, we were beat up by the police, by everybody. I didn't really come out as a drag queen until the late 60s, when drag queens were arrested. What degradation there was. I remember the first time I got arrested. I wasn't even in full drag. I was walking down the street and cops just snatched me. People now want to call me a lesbian because I'm with Julia, and I say, no, I'm just me. I'm not lesbian. I'm tired of being labeled. I don't even like the label transgender. I'm tired of living with labels. I just want to be who I am. I am Sylvia Rivera. Ray Rivera left home at the age of 10 to become Sylvia, and that's who I am.
A legend. So people ask, we say, she was Sylvia.
She was Sylvia.
Motherfuckers.
She died from complications from liver cancer when she was 50 in 2002.
Oh man, that's not very old.
No, not at all. But another activist, Ricky Wilchens, noted in many ways Sylvia was the Rosa Parks of the modern transgender movement.
Oh dang.
Just because I think she was so headstrong and, like, I guess you could say stubborn in a way.
Yeah.
And fighting for, like, well, I guess Marsha too. I would consider both of them.
Definitely. They were all like, them and it feels like their fucking group of friends were just like activism gods, just doing everything and making me feel like I'm not doing shit over here.
Legends.
They were truly legends.
But yeah, although the Stonewall Riots of 1969 in New York are popularly remembered as the spark that produced a new movement, the origins predate these iconic events.
Ooh, that was a fancy sentence.
It was. They basically have been fighting as early as 1725.
Whew. For gay rights?
It's like, yeah.
Yikes.
That's what I saw. When customers fought off a police raid at London homosexual Molly House, which is basically like a trap house for gay men.
Oh my gosh. Love it.
That was basically what it was.
Yeah. 1700s were a crazy time.
The movements of the period before gay liberation from the end of World War II to the late 1960s are known collectively as the homophile movement. And homophile is basically an old term for homosexual.
Yeah, very old term. I also encountered this word and I was like, this sounds not nice.
Yeah.
It sounds like someone's like saying like a homosexual pedophile or something combined. I don't know. It doesn't sound good.
Yeah, definitely not. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit of the Lavender Scare.
Ooh, I don't know what this is.
I'll tell you.
Okay. It sounds like vaguely familiar, but that might be because you just mentioned it last week to me.
It was a moral panic during the mid-20th century about homosexual people in the United States government and their mass dismissal from the government service.
Oh my god.
Yep. It contributed to unparalleled to the anti-communist campaign known as McCarthyism.
Okay.
And the second Red Scare.
Jeez. Oh, so it was named after the... Okay, I've heard of the Red Scare, not the Lavender Scare.
Not the Lavender Scare. They should have called it the Rainbow Scare.
The rainbow. I think before they decided on the rainbow for us.
Yeah, it is. Gay men and lesbians were said to be national security risks and communist sympathizers, which led to the call to remove them from state employment. Ridiculous.
So stupid. I think I did read a little bit about that, but I didn't know what it was called.
Mm-hmm. It was thought that gay people were more susceptible to being manipulated, which could pose a threat to the country.
What? Why? What's the logic there? Why are they more... Do they think they're gonna be like seduced or something? Like they're horny or
something? I don't know.
Oh yeah, that makes more sense than they're horny.
But yeah, hence came Executive Order 10450, signed by President Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1953.
Okay.
It set security standards for the federal employment and barred homosexuals from working in the federal government.
Jesus Christ, that was a law.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck.
It caused for hundreds of gay people to be forcibly outed and fired from the State Department.
Dang, fuck you, Eisenhower, you dumb bitch.
Yeah, and it only got worse before it got better.
Oh no.
While Truman was in charge, they extended the executive order and added sexual perversion to the list of behaviors that would keep a person from holding a position in government.
Fuck you too, bitch. Just go
Yeah.
through every president while I say that.
But yeah, not to mention, like, the whole time they had this order, they would, like, actively seek to catch people.
Oh my
And they were
God.
automatically, like, guilty by association. Like, if you were in a gay bar, if your family members were gay, they kind of, like, grouped you together.
Your
If
family's gay.
friends-
You're all gay.
Yeah, basically.
How fucking stupid is this?
And then also, like, for employment, they would basically, like, when you would get interviewed, they would try to, like, get you to
Out
say
you
what
in a
your
way?
try to
I'm
get you
sure
to say what your sexual orientation is.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully people didn't fall for that. I'm sure that people were like, no. Used to
No,
hiding it by then.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
By the mid 1950s, more than 12 million workers were affected by the order.
Oh,
That's
no.
more than 20% of the U.S. labor force.
Pretty sure they weren't all LGBTQ.
No, yeah, I'm pretty sure. It's just like guilt by association.
Oh my God, that's crazy. That's a fifth of it. Fuck.
But if they did, like, basically say I'm not gay, they were, like, in order to work, they had to sign oaths attesting to their moral purity to get or keep their jobs.
Ew, dude.
Basically had to sign a contract.
I contractually am straight.
So
So stupid. Like, this contract means nothing. Oh, sure, I'll sign it. I don't care.
But yeah, it wasn't until 1973 when a federal judge ruled a person's sexual orientation could not be the sole reason for termination from federal employment. It would be from case-by-case basis.
That's still
So,
kind of
like,
weird.
I mean, it's progress, though.
Yeah, a little bit of progress.
But
Two
still,
steps
yeah.
forward, one step back. They're like, you're fine, unless you're too gay. Then, no, it's a different case.
It just depends, okay?
I guess, I don't know.
It partly stayed in effect until 1995 when President Bill Clinton rescinded the order and put into place the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, also known as the DADT.
Also dumb as shit. You said Bill Clinton?
Yeah.
Fuck you, Bill Clinton, bitch. Just going through the list.
He also signed the Executive Order 13087, which prohibited discrimination based on sexual orientation from the workforce.
Okay, as he signed Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
No, that was kind of in favor.
Oh, wait. Say it again. Maybe I misheard you.
Well, he rescinded the other order, the previous one, and basically added a new policy. It was Don't Ask, Don't Tell, like literally what it sounds like it means.
Slightly less homophobic, but still homophobic.
Yeah, it's still not good enough.
Still fuck you, bitch.
But yeah, one of the first and most influential members of the gay rights movements was Frank Kameny. He was actually forced into unemployment because of his sexual orientation in 1957.
Jeez.
He was working as an astronomer for the U.S. Army Map Service, but was fired as a result of the Lavender Scare.
Oh my gosh.
And I guess he could never find another job again in the U.S.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, what the fuck?
I was like, dude, he got lavender listed.
Lavender listed. Honestly,
Listed
it works. Yeah, it works. I'm not mad. I
was like, I don't know. I was debating if I should say that or not. I was like, I don't know.
He got boom boom lavender listed. That's good. That's fucking funny.
Sorry.
You should have said at the beginning.
To be offensive if it is.
No, I think it's.
I think we can laugh about it now. It's better now.
Also, it's not like we wish that didn't happen to him. I think it's just a play on words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, this led to Frank devoting his life to the gay rights movement. In 1965, 4 years before the Stonewall Riots, he picketed the white fence on the grounds of gay rights. I also just kind of talk about a little bit about the Lavender Menace, which was a group of lesbians formed in response to male domination of other gay lib groups and the anti-lesbianism.
I love this.
So yeah, they basically said fuck all y'all, and they created their own little group.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff I was reading, it was primarily like white gay guys doing everything.
That's
I'm
what I was gonna say too. Like they were banding together, but then also like excluding transgender and like low income, like racism, or like I don't know how to find the words, but you know what I mean. Like it was primarily white.
Yeah, like the group that I said that formed, that Marsha was then formed, and they were like trying to align with like the Black Panthers, and then a different group formed, and they're like, we're only gonna focus on gay rights, not racism. And I'm like, you can't do both? Can't? No, you sure?
Guess not. But yeah, in 1970, Huey Newton, the leader of the Black Panthers at the time, publicly expressed his support for gay liberation, stating, "Whatever your personal opinions and your insecurities about homosexuality and the various liberation movements among homosexuals and women, and I speak for the homosexuals and women oppressed, we should try to unite with them in a revolutionary fashion."
Yes.
Some people say that homosexuality is the decadence of capitalism. I don't know if that is the case. I rather doubt it. But whatever the case is, we know that homosexuality is a fact that exists, and we must understand it in its purest form. That is, a person should have the freedom to use his body in whatever way he wants.
Hell yeah. See, that's intersectionality there. Yeah, like the one group I told you was like teaming up with the Black Panthers too, and then the other group was like, we don't need to do that. And I'm like, why? You guys could have teamed up and taken over everything.
Deadass, it could have like gotten it quicker.
Oh, it would have been so much quicker, I'm sure, for everyone.
Beaches.
Whatever.
But yeah. Now I'm gonna talk a little bit about Harvey Bernard Milk.
All right.
Leche, let's go.
So stupid.
Sorry. Got him.
Got him.
Harvey was one of the first openly gay elected official in the history of California.
Woo.
He was elected to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors.
So funny because it's such a big deal, but that seems like such a minor position too to be elected to.
Well, I guess it's like he was one of, I guess the Board of Supervisors is kind of like right under the mayor.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind. I just don't know.
I just don't know either, but that's kind of what I assume because you'll see.
Okay, cool.
Harvey served almost 11 months in office, during which he sponsored a bill banning discrimination in public accommodations, housing, and employment on the basis of sexual orientation.
Hell yeah, Harvey. Killing it.
It was passed and signed into law by Mayor George Moscone. Oh, I read a little bit about his competitor that was running against him.
Ooh, no.
And he was basically the total opposite of Harvey. Yeah. And he had something called the Briggs Initiative, which was his proposed law to fire gay teachers and any public school employees who supported gay rights.
What?
Yep. He maintained that gay teachers wanted to abuse and recruit children.
Okay, first of all, the abuse part, fucking stupid. But I'm interested. Recruit them into what?
To be gay.
Recruit them into being gay. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. What a fucking moron. I'm so glad he lost.
But yeah, I guess like Harvey just kind of like brushed it off and actually combated with statistics and evidence that pedophiles identify primarily as heterosexual.
Yeah. And it always bugs me. I don't really, whenever I hear about pedophiles, I don't really consider them like gay, straight, or bi or anything. I'm just like, they're a pedophile, you know?
They're nasty.
They're just gross. Yeah, I don't
Trash.
think that any group wants them. Even the straights don't want them, you guys. So let's not do that. So don't act like they're just gay or something.
But yeah, I'm gonna read his speech called
Okay.
the Hope Speech. It's
Can
just
I
a little
ask-
excerpt.
Can I ask real quick what year this was around?
The 1970s.
Okay, it was the
Like-
70s.
It was like 1977.
Okay, I thought it was the 80s for some reason, but that teacher
It
thing
was
just shocked me so much. I was like, maybe older?
Almost the 80s.
Not long enough ago to justify that other opponent. Holy shit.
But yeah. On this anniversary of the Stonewall, I asked my gay sisters and brothers to make the commitment to fight for themselves, for their freedom, for their country. We will not win our rights by staying quietly in our closets. I thought that was funny. We are coming out to fight the lies, the myths, the distortions. We are coming out to tell the truth about the gays, for I am tired of this conspiracy of silence. So I am going to talk about it, and I want you to talk about it. You must come out. Come out to your parents, your relatives.
Dang. But also, should we point out that it's not safe for everyone to come out to their family when they're
Yeah.
young? Some people could get murdered that way, Harvey.
True. It's
But
not
it's
safe
hard
for
to-
everybody.
Yeah, his heart's in the right place, though.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, on November 27th, 1978, George and Harvey were assassinated by a disgruntled city supervisor, Dan White.
Jesus. George is the mayor, right?
Yeah.
Holy shit. So, was it even a homophobia thing?
It was kind of more than that,
Uh-huh.
but he was just on a rampage.
That's
the guy, Dan White.
scary.
But yeah, Dan White was also like a supervisor there,
Mm-hmm.
but he basically just frequently clashed with Harvey. They didn't really get
Hmm.
along,
Yeah.
and he just like didn't like them. Like he thought they were too liberal.
Oh, no.
So he actually resigned a few days before he murdered them. And just
Oh.
because he said that he just wasn't happy there and he saw some what's it called?
Corruption?
Yeah, that. I tried to create a new word.
Corruption.
Well, on November 14th, a few days before he murdered them, he basically tried to reverse his resignation.
Oh. Okay.
And George, the mayor, he initially agreed, like, to bring him back, but then later refused because, like, basically Harvey and the other supervisors were like, no.
No, fuck that guy.
Yep.
And for good reason. He sucked.
Yeah, that ass. But I guess, yeah, on November 27th, 1978, he, like, climbed in through a first-story window to, like, get past security.
Oh.
And he went to go kill the mayor first. And he entered the mayor's office and basically pleaded to be reinstated as a supervisor, but obviously George refused. And he killed him by shooting him in the shoulder and the chest and twice in the head.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Uh-huh. He then walked to the other side of the city hall to Harvey's office, reloaded his gun, and fatally shot him 5 times.
Jeez.
Yep.
I thought that they were like in the same room. This is like cold-blooded. He walked across the entire city hall to seek out Harvey to also murder him.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck.
You wanna hear what his defense was?
Oh, yes, of course. It's gonna be great, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's called the Twinkie Defense.
The what?
The Twinkie Defense.
What does this mean?
It was basically saying that he suffered diminished capacity as a result of his depression, which was a symptom of a change in diet from healthy foods to Twinkies and other sugary foods.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Isn't
the
that
dumbest thing ever.
Mm-hmm. But
Did it
he
work?
was sentenced to 7 years, but he only served 5 of those.
Wait, that's not a long time at all.
Mm-mm.
Did the Twinkie Defense low-key work?
Not huge. I don't know.
Jeez, because that seems like first-degree murder, no? He, like, clearly planned this.
Yeah.
That's intense.
I guess it wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
But if you were wondering, he died on October 21st, 1985, less than 2 years after his release from prison.
Oh,
He died
thank
from
God.
carbon monoxide poisoning in his garage.
He killed himself?
Well, it doesn't specify, but...
But if it's carbon monoxide poisoning in his garage, that sounds like he killed himself.
Maybe.
Isn't that what people do? They, like, leave their car engines on?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Especially
Fuck,
the
man.
old-ass cars.
Yeah. They were killing machines, dude. Oh my God, that's a dark story.
Yeah. I was like, dude, that's so sad.
Yeah. I can't believe you went, like, sought him out after killing the mayor, too. That's so scary.
Have you seen the movie, Milk?
I watched it once whenever I was, like, much, much younger, and I can't really remember it. Did you watch it?
Same. I just remember that it was good.
I definitely want to watch that movie, and I want to watch Marsha's documentary, too. The one I started. I still have it open.
But yeah, now I'm just gonna talk a bit about gay marriage.
Yeah, boy.
It was a long-ass fight.
Sure
More
was.
than 45 years.
Fuck. I mean, technically, thousands of years if we're counting
Yeah,
way far
technically.
back.
Technically. But I mean, because in 1970, that was kind of
Mhm.
like when they were really discrimination was like tough, and they were just
Like
putting
at a
hands
really,
on
like a
same
big
sex.
low.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Like they actually like made it illegal for you to marry same sex.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But yeah, spousal rights weren't a thing.
I think I've read stories of people who said, like, during the AIDS epidemic and stuff too, like people's partners wouldn't even be able to come and like say bye to them as they were dying.
Mm-hmm.
That's fucked up.
Or also, if they did have, well, later on, if they did have a partnership, there still wasn't, like, they couldn't, like, access their life insurance because they didn't see their marriage as, like, valid. Or shit like
That's
that.
so sad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know people are like, oh, like, marriage is just, like, whatever, like, we don't need it. And I'm like, there is actually, like, legal things that you can benefit from.
Yep. It wasn't until the late 1990s that it started getting a little better. And they were, like, repealing on previous bans.
Oh, good.
In 2003, Massachusetts was actually the first state to legalize gay marriage.
That is so surprising.
Mm-hmm.
What year again? 2003?
Yeah.
Dang. I always expect California to be first in everything like this.
Actually, they weren't.
Jeez.
No, watch. In 2003, California passed the Domestic Partnership Law, which provides same-sex partners with almost all the rights and responsibilities as spouses in several marriages. That was until the next year, 2004, where it was voided.
Is that Prop 8?
Prop 8 came later.
Okay.
It came after 2008, because that was when they overturned the ban.
Oh,
and then
okay.
Prop 8 came out in 2010, which declared, like, the ban unconstitutional.
Oh my gosh.
So literally, not until 2010 is when all the states basically started.
That's
hopping
so
on the
crazy.
train.
I know, the
Yeah,
Massachusetts
Literally,
train.
it was fucking 10 years ago, or 11.
I think the first country to ever do it was the Netherlands, and that was in like 2001, so not even that long ago either.
Mm-hmm. It's wild. But yeah, 2010 was kind of when it started, then slowly, year by year, it was New York in 2011. In 2012, it was Washington State, Maine, Maryland. In 2013, Rhode Island, Delaware, Minnesota, New Jersey, Hawaii, Illinois, and New Mexico, and Utah.
Gee, they're all like so slow getting on this.
Yeah, that is. In 2014, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Kansas, and South Carolina also legalized it. And it wasn't until 2015, 626 to be exact.
I remember the date. Oh,
yeah,
it's
I did too.
a close friend of mine whenever I was in middle school. That's her birthday.
Yeah, I remember the day because of Stitch. Experiment
Two very different ones. I remember just being like, oh, and it's Kristen's birthday.
The U.S. Supreme Court made same-sex marriages legal in all 50 states.
Steaks. That was one of the best ones yet. I know you got food on the mind, it seems.
In all 50 states. In Oberfell v. Hodges. And I just want to end with this little quote to just kind of like respect. But this is what they said, like when they made that decision to like make legalize gay marriage. Sorry, I'm struggling with my words.
You're good. As we get near the end, we're both like,
yeah. No union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family. In forming a marital union, two people become something greater than once they were. As some of the petitioners in these cases demonstrate, marriage embodies love that may endure even past death. It would misunderstand these men and women to say that they disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they do respect it so deeply that they seek to find its fulfillment for themselves. Their hope is not to be condemned to live in loneliness, excluded from one of civilization's oldest institutions. They ask for equal dignity in the eyes of the law. The Constitution grants them that right.
That's a nice quote.
I was like, damn, that's beautiful.
That's beauty. I'm crying.
But they literally legalized gay marriage 6 years ago.
Not even.
Yeah, not even.
I thought it was 2014 for some reason. That is even less time than I thought.
Yeah, it was 2015.
Holy shit. 2015? That just sounds bad to say that's how long it took you. That's embarrassing.
Deadass.
I'm a little embarrassed right now.
I graduated in 2015.
Yeah, you were married like a year later. Something like that.
I was married like 3 years later. I married in 2018.
Oh. Okay. Well, I guess it was already legal in California. I was like, that wasn't that long after, Brandy.
It was 3 years.
Dang, that's so crazy. I really thought it was farther back.
But I mean, obviously the fight's not over with this whole fucking bathroom laws they're trying to pass and all the bullshit.
Bathroom laws they've been trying to pass for like 8 years now, and I'm like, stop.
True. It's so
probably
dumb.
Been trying to pass it forever. It's fucking stupid. Don't be transphobic.
And they're trying to ban trans people again from the military. It's just
oh my
so
god.
Dumb.
It's like, I think that the military is stupid, but I'm like, let trans people go be stupid too if they want.
That's their right.
You're right. You're right to be stupid and join the military.
Yeah, it's just so annoying.
It's truly a never-ending battle, it seems like, which is fucking stupid. And did you hear a couple weeks ago, a 20-year-old, I believe it was, in Iran, his family found out that he was gay and they murdered him?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. We have a long way to go, unfortunately.
In a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, it's still, like, super illegal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like,
it's still illegal in a lot of places.
I actually found, like, a map.
Oh!
I found this on Wikipedia. It was basically...
I know in Russia, too, it's really bad, right? I remember reading about gay men being, like, tortured in Russia.
Damn. Yeah, well, on Wikipedia, there's this... It's a wiki/LGBT/ or dash rights dash by country or territory. And it basically is a list of countries or territories by LGBT rights, and it just starts with Africa, and it shows you like where it's like
Legal and stuff?
yeah,
Or what's
it
legal?
says recognition of same-sex unions, same-sex marriage, adoption by same-sex couples,
Jeez.
LGBT people allowed to serve openly in military, anti-discrimination laws concerning sexual orientation, laws concerning gender identity expression.
Oh my gosh. They got
See,
everything.
No, yeah, it's like it has the different columns, and then it shows you like the country.
I see one that's a map, but I'm not good at geography, which I think we've said before, so I'm like, I don't know where this is. I know the
Yeah,
continents.
like, it's interesting to see how many red X's there are. Like, it's kind of ridiculous.
I also see here, as of 2021, same-sex marriage is legally performed and recognized in 29 countries. Isn't there like 200 countries?
Something like that.
All right, you guys, we got a long journey ahead of us.
It ain't over.
It ain't over till
Just
it's
the
over.
beginning.
And the gays are ruling as they should be.
Hot gay.
Gay. I saw at Disneyland when I was there a couple weeks ago, someone that was wearing like a rainbow romper, and I copied her and went and ordered online. Now that I'm even more straight passing in a relationship with a guy, I'm like, no, I gotta be extra gay now how I dress. And I got the socks with the bi flag colors on top of them. Those are on the way. Cool. But yeah. Anything else, Brandy?
I just want to take some time to thank all those people that participated in the Stonewall Riots.
Yes, hell yeah.
Because I feel like it was such a significant event because it kind of got the ball rolling more.
It probably would have taken so much longer if they didn't.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the Stonewall homies.
Yeah, thank you for fighting for our rights.
Thank you.
Because of y'all, I could come out and I could marry my wife.
Seriously, whoa. That is so crazy. Yeah, it would have taken much, much longer if they didn't do anything, I bet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Stonewall people. So if you guys would like to email us any of your stories related to Pride Month, our email is thespookyshit.pod@gmail.com. Our Twitter and Instagram are spookyshit_pod, and our website is spookyshit-pod. Thank you all for listening on this very different episode. It's more history than anything.
Spooky.
Yeah, but it did have, homophobia is pretty spooky, I must say. So
yeah, that's pretty fucking scary. And transphobia.
Yeah, exactly. And transphobia within homophobia too, like gay people being transphobic.
Within the actual fucking community.
Yes. That's the weirdest shit. I'm like, bro, we're on the same side, idiot.
Mm-hmm. Dumb.
So dumb. I think it was spooky enough.
One day.
Yeah. One day everyone will be fucking nice, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But yeah, thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you next week in our next Gay Pride episode. Goodbye.
Bye.
Oh, do you want to say your name first, Brandy? Do you want to take this crazy?
That's weird.
So no.
I mean, we could try it.
People are going to be like, this is the wrong podcast.
No, how do you start? You just
say, hey, everybody, it's... And you can say, and this is spooky shit. This is crazy.
I'll try.
Okay.